Joe. Joe.
Joe on Joe is the only podcast where Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey everyone, welcome back. It's been a while, and I say that because this is the Joe on Joe Illustrated show, and this is typically the patron exclusive podcast, but every 5 I like to share it with the world. So it's been a couple months since I last did a regular episode of Joe on Joe, so I hope you guys have kept this in your feed, and we will be putting these out a little more regularly. I keep saying that, but one of the things that's been slowing me up a little bit, by the way, this is Joe Slepsky, your host. This is the only podcast where we go over every issue of G.I. Joe Real American Era, the comic book, page by page, panel by panel, in super detail, hyper realistic detail. Now, I've been working on a couple little fun things that I think you listeners will enjoy quite a bit. One of them is a project for this summer, so keep your eyes peeled. That's all I'm going to say. And the other ones are a couple interviews with some very cool people, right directly ripped from the Joe world. So I'm working on getting those knocked out, and we will be sharing those on the feed when we do. So thank you guys again for all your support, all your listening, and all your clicks and all the various things you give me. And remember, everyone, while you're on the internet, check me out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Follow me at Joe and Joe Pod. Send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know if you have any ideas what you think of the future of the show you might want to see out of the show. I'm always up for doing new stuff. And remember to check out our sponsor, Dreamer Comics Podcast. My friend Omar Spahi talks to people in the comic book industry. It talks about how they got in. It talks about the dreams they had. It talks about how they made their dreams become a reality. And finally, go to patreon.com/JoeOnJoePod and let me know you care by becoming a patron. A patron gets full exclusive access to every episode of Joe on Joe Illustrated that we have done. So far, 55 episodes plus an annual, and we're going to be doing the special missions, and we're going to be doing G.I. Joe versus Transformers. So go on over there and check it out. And today I'm very excited because we're going to be going over G.I. Joe issue number 55, Unmaskings, from January of 1987. And so we're going to start with our favorite segment.
You were saying?
And see what was on the comic book stands during January of 1987. So we're going to start with DC Comics and take a look. This is a really great month for Superman, everybody. This was the first month of John Byrne's full vision of what a Superman monthly universe looks like. He had previously, for the previous 3 months, been putting out Superman the Man of Steel miniseries, which rewrote Superman's origins for a post-crisis universe. And this is now the post-crisis ongoing adventure, so to speak, filtered through John Byrne's visions. So, and also, I should not go any further without saying, also Marv Wolfman and Jerry Ordway's visions as well. Eventually, George Perez would join them, and a lot of great collaborators. Carl Kiesel. A lot of these guys deserve the credit. It gets the name the Byrne revamp because he was absolutely the spearhead, and he's earned all that recognition. But the stuff that Marv Wolfman and Jerry Ordway were doing was dynamite. If you guys enjoyed the recent Shazam movie, which I hope you did because I sure did, I thought it was wonderful. You have a lot to thank for Jerry Ordway, who in the was it mid late 90s? I want to say maybe like 95. He gave Captain Marvel's Shazam a revamp that it absolutely needed, and kind of cemented the way forward for how DC should incorporate that character. And it's just absolutely delightful. Now, the movie took a ton from the Jeff Johns series, lifted directly from that, really. But I don't think you get to that Jeff Johns series without the work that Jerry Ordway did with Shazam in mid-90s. His Power of Shazam series was just dynamite. But we're stuck in January of 1987, so we're talking about Action Comics 584, Adventures of Superman 424, and Superman Volume 2, number It's a huge month for Superman guys and John Byrne lovers. The Action 584 comic is it's an iconic cover. It's Superman taking on the Teen Titans. It's great. And Superman's kind of looking malevolent. This falls under one of those covers that can always be filed under like super dickery. This run of Action is really, really good, and it's really smart. Byrne treated it as basically the Marvel team up for Superman, like Superman team up. Every issue he teamed up with someone else. There were a couple of questionable things that he did. I'm looking at you, Big Barda, in the porno film, but it's really great because you get to see Superman interacting with the rest of the DC universe right away. Like post-crisis, let's get into it, and then you get to see Byrne working on the rest of the universe, which is also tremendous. Adventures of Superman 424. This picks up the numbering from the regular Superman title. So previously, you had Superman 423, which was part of the Alan Moore Whatever Happened in the Man of Tomorrow 2-part storyline. This picks up right away going into Adventures of Superman 424, which continues the long-standing tradition of not renumbering series, but of continuing the series with a different title. That's an old school comic book tradition. They've pretty much gotten away from it almost completely these days, which is disappointing because I love it. I think it gives it both a sense of history. It gives a sense of quest and like knowledge to be learned for new readers. Like they look at it and go, okay, so I'm reading Superman 424. That's an enjoyable comic on its own. But what happened in 423? Let me go to the store and buy that. Let me go and get 422 and so on and so forth. I am a firm believer, and you will never convince me otherwise, that constantly rebooting the books makes sense. It does in some instances, which is what the next book we're going to talk about, which is Superman #1. So in this instance, they were really doing a full redefine of Superman. So it makes sense to give him at least one title that absolutely was issue #1. Here we go from the ground up and running, and you get Superman #1. So Action stayed the same. Superman became Adventures of Superman, and then you get a fresh Superman #1. And it's great. It's Superman fighting Metallo, and it's funny. It's not like this covers, it's classic just because it's Superman #1. I've seen it a million times, but I've never considered it like a classic iconic cover. He certainly did that with his Man of Steel stuff, and this really feels like a continuation. Like this could be issue 13, like there wasn't really anything super iconic about Superman #1. That's always kind of stuck in my craw a little bit over the years, for good or bad, It's still gorgeous, and the Byrne Superman is still my favorite all-time Superman, so big props there. Watchmen continues with issue #5 on the stands. We all know Watchmen. We all know it's dynamite, and get your copies today. I've said it before in the show. I literally remember seeing Watchmen in like the dollar bins or the 50-cent bins because there were so many copies of it, and now, of course, because everyone and their brother loves it, it can be a pricey book to get, so that's important. Legends #3 is on the stands. This is the first appearance of the Suicide Squad in the current form. Technically, the Suicide Squad did exist in the Silver Age, like Task Force X, and I want to say they had runs. It was like in Showcase or something like that. But this is the kind of the new version where they're criminals, like they're legit DC Universe costume criminals being enlisted by Amanda Waller, with the explosive chip in your neck. The version that exists to this day, the version that they made the movie off of. So Legends 3 has shot up in value. I think it's around a $30 or $40 book right now. And the rest of the Legends issues are, $5 maybe. It's not a super valuable book. Green Lantern Corps #208. This is always a favorite because this was, it's 1987. It's the height of, Russian U.S. scare tactics and stuff. And they introduced Kilowog. He had been in the book for a while, but what they introduced was that they said his home planet, which I believe is Bolivac's Kick, was actually founded on a communist society. So when he landed on Earth and realized, wait a minute, there's a place called Russia, and you guys live like what you call communism is what we just called society. I want to live there. So he went over to Russia. Meanwhile, Guy Gardner's like, you can't go to Russia. They're our enemy. Guy Gardner loves America, loves Ronald Reagan. It was a really wonderful twist to the story because Kilowog was totally a hero. It just happens to be from a different society. So that's always been a very fun issue for me. And over in Detective 570, the last DC one for today, we've got the Joker facing off against Batman with like an old school Catwoman, and this is important because it's Alan Davis drawing it, and those Alan Davis issues are primo and should absolutely be revered by everybody, especially the Joker stuff. And so that's it for
You Were Saying.
And now Marvel Comics. We're going to see what was on the stands for Marvel. Now, first thing that it caught my eye was Chuck Norris, #1. Chuck Norris and the Karate Commandos, the comic book adaptation of his very short-lived cartoon and action figure line. Yeah, it's pretty great. I don't think I have a copy of this comic, but everything in me wants a copy of this comic book. I recently, at WonderCon, picked up the film adaptation for the movie Cyborg with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and it made my weekend. Daredevil 238 has Daredevil fighting off against Sabretooth, and this is key because this is Sabretooth's maybe his 4th appearance or something like that. Like, he had not appeared very often. At the same time this month, he is over in X-Men, and he is fighting Wolverine in X-Men 213 as part of the Mutant Massacre. It's again another Alan Davis cover. Speaking of the Master, but over in X-Men, that was kind of the first time that Claremont and the Marvel said, "Oh yeah, Sabretooth, this guy kind of looks just like Wolverine and acts just like Wolverine. He knows Wolverine, and they're old enemies, and this and that." So those books are really important. X-Men 213, but he also shows up in Daredevil 238, which is a crossover with the Mutant Massacre. So those are really key issues. They're early Sabretooth appearances. They're good ones to have in your collection. Defenders of the Earth #1. Okay, cartoon fans, G.I. Joe fans, you guys are here for it. I love Defenders of the Earth. I thought the cartoon was amazing. It combined the old pulp superheroes of the Phantom, Mandrake the Magician, his assistant Lothar, and Flash Gordon, fighting against Ming the Merciless here on Earth, which is like Lee Fawkes Creations and Alex Raymond. And the show is just dynamite. If you've never seen the actual cartoon, I urge you to seek it out. It's got a little bit of that 80s, we need to pair them up with kids stuff to it, but it actually worked it organically, where all the kids were their literal children. And they weren't super obnoxious. The focus was still on the Defenders themselves. It's where I first met Mandrake the Magician and, well, Lothar certainly, and the Phantom. I didn't know who the Phantom was when I was a kid. I knew who Flash Gordon was because they had that movie and Ming the Merciless and all that. I had seen all that. But the show was just really, really well done, and I'm a fan. And the comic Defenders of the Earth, let's see who wrote it. It's written by, Stan Lee. Okay. It was written by Bob Harris, and penciled by Alex Saviuk, who's a real solid talent. And like, it's delightful. Like, it is totally a delightful run of comic books, and the cartoon is even better. They recently did a, Dynamite put these guys back together on a team. They couldn't call them Defenders of the Earth. They called them something like the Kings something or other, because I think in reference to the King Feature Syndicate, something like that. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it as we're recording it, but if you've never seen Defenders of the Earth, seek it out. It's really, really good. And I like it. I like all that old pulp stuff, because so much of that inspired the creators like Roy Thomas and the guys who were writing these books at the time. So to see them then be able to write these characters, which is the stuff that they loved when they were kids. It's like watching current people like Jeff Johns write about the DC heroes that he loved coming up in the 90s. Speaking of like Superman, Batman, and like the John Byrne Superman, things like that. So check it out. Check Defenders of the Earth out for sure. It's very, very cool. I doubt that comic will ever be reprinted, so you'll have to find it on the back issue market. But highest recommendation. Also this month, important to G.I. Joe fans, is G.I. Joe and the Transformers #1. This is the comic that cemented that G.I. Joe was in the same universe as the Transformers. I mean, this is huge. This is just massive, guys. Absolutely massive. It's so big that I'm going to do a special episode of it. I'll cover it on JoJo Illustrated, so we won't go into much more detail there. But I'll just say, this is so important. I absolutely remember where I was when I bought this. I was in Fort Wayne, Indiana at my cousin's, and my cousin Dave took me there. I remember driving to the comic shop. He had a hole in the floor of his Jeep. But I was so excited because they had this crossover, and my local shop didn't have any copies of it. Dynamite, really, really dynamite stuff. And also of note for G.I. Joe fans, Action Force Annual #1. This is probably like my next big hole in my personal collection I need to fill. I don't have all the Action Forces. I have a bunch of them, but I certainly don't have all of them. And Action Force, of course, is the British reprint, or actually not reprint. Sorry, it's the British version of G.I. Joe. And I believe it came out weekly. I'm not an expert on this, guys, so bear with me. I believe it came out weekly, and was new. The ones I've read, they're like new short, like 8-page adventures, and I think there is some reprint information in there. But I'm not sure because I've actually never read a lot of them. So I look forward to digging in on that. The ones I've read were like all new content and like little quick 8-pagers. A lot of the personalities are different, of course. Wasn't written by Larry Hama. So the characters just behave just a little bit differently, and the relationships aren't exactly the same. But I dig it. It's like they were like loaned out to Britain by America to help them out. So more on that as I learn a little bit more on that. I don't want to speak out of turn because I'm sure a lot of you listeners are like, you're totally getting it wrong on Action Force. So I don't want to spread misinformation. But the first annual came out this month, and that's going to do it for
You were saying
with Marvel Comics. And now we're going to go to the movie theater and see what was in the theaters the month of January 1987. Okay, so January is not a great month for movies in retrospect. January of 87. The first movie we got on January 9th is Assassination with Charles Bronson and Jill Ireland. She's the first lady, and he has to protect her, and I'm sure he's going to be in a relationship with her and cheat on the president or something like that. Not very good. January 16th, we've got the Bedroom Window. It's a psychological thriller starring Steve Guttenberg. I'm out. Critical Condition with Richard Pryor. Pryor made some bad movies, but Pryor is amazing. So I've never seen Critical Condition, but I would give it a look just for Pryor. On January 23rd, one of those like stupid sex comedies, a movie called Jocks. I've never seen it. No need to see it. Although it's got Mariska Hargitay. That's weird. Richard Roundtree. What? The Stepfather on January 23rd. This I've seen. This is great. This is a cool movie. This is Terry O'Quinn, Locke from Lost. You know, he's an identity assuming serial killer who marries a widow and a teenage daughter. I believe they made a couple sequels to this at least one sequel. And I know they did a remake of it. It's really pretty creepy. I've seen this movie relatively recently. It holds up. I like it a lot. Plus, Terry O'Quinn is just really good. Alan Quartermain and the Lost City of Gold came out on January 27th. The movie's not very good. It's got Sharon Stone, James Earl Jones, Richard Chamberlain. This is just them trying to capitalize on the Indiana Jones stuff, seeing what properties are out there. Alan Quartermain existed as a property. Let's make an Indiana Jones kind of thing, but let's not put any of the budget or any of the talent in it. These movies are not very watchable. They're really, really not. On the 27th, though, also we had Outrageous Fortune, which I remember being very, very funny. 1987 comedy with Shelley Long and Bette Midler, and two ladies who get in a bunch of hijinks. This movie, what's it? Down on Beverly Hills, Ruthless People. This is one of those kind of movies of like class satire, class warfare movies, if I recall correctly. And I think this one was held up pretty well. And then we've also got Radio Days by Woody Allen. I'm not a big fan of Woody Allen. I don't like to give him a lot of heat, but that came out on January 27th. And that's it for January. Very short month in the theaters for
You were saying?
And now let's dig into G.I. Joe number 55. This great cover by Mike Zeck continues his run of legendary covers. It's called Unmaskings, and it's the one where Cobra Commander, Destro, and Snake Eyes are all pulling the hoods off of their respective hidden faces. And this is possibly the biggest tease cover of all time, because nowhere in this comic book do we ever get to see what their normal faces look like. But you're teased it on the cover. Like, this is the cover this is what a cover is for, guys. This cover makes you pull it off the stands and go like, wait a minute, what? They're showing us their faces this month? I gotta get to that. And no, that doesn't happen. We get teased at it, and a lot of people like to think that Cobra Commander's look, which we'll get to, is his normal look, but that's not his look. He's wearing a fake Mustang. It's all fake. So we're going to get to that a little bit later, and we never really see Snake Eyes' face. Some people in the book do, but we certainly don't. But it's a great looking cover. I like that everyone's doing it with their left hand. But also everyone's doing it differently though. Cobra Commander's pulling it from the top of his head. Snake Eyes he's on the top, but he's kind of pulling it to the side. And Destro is using both hands to take it off. This might have been the issue where I realized Destro was a white guy. I mean it, because I never realized that was an open chest look for him. I thought that was like a yellow shirt that he wore. And then obviously Burkhart did the voice, and it's strong black man doing the voice. So I never heard Scottish. So this was a revelation for me, where I'm like, wait a minute, what? Anyway.
Yo, Joe!
Stan Lee presents Unmaskings. Script by Larry Hama, Rod Wiggum pencils, Andy Muschinsky inks, George Russo's colors, Joe Rosen lettering, Bob Harris is the editor, and Jim Shooter is the editor-in-chief. Deep under Fort Wadsworth in Staten Island, we visit Cobra Commander and Destro. Remember, 2 episodes ago, they got crushed by the collapsing pit. And last episode, we learned that they were still alive for weeks. Like, weeks had passed, and they were still trying to get out of here. But we just get right to it in this one, and we see that Destro found an escape tunnel. And, of course, Cobra Commander is complaining that it's unfair. Now, what I like about, according to this picture, well, no, it's just a reflection. It looks like Cobra Commander has a miner's helmet on, but if you look on the next panel, it's not shooting light. It's just reflecting off of Destro's flashlight. However, the most important detail on this whole page, what is it? It's Cobra Commander's underarm hair. Rod Wiggum drew underarm hair on Cobra Commander. God bless you, Rod Wiggum. Everyone take a close look. It's fantastic.
Yo, Joe!
So Cobra Commander's losing his mind a little bit, and he's starting to manually dig out of the tunnel. Destro, of course, still keeps it cool and realizes that the Joes must have had a secondary bolt hole, like a secondary way out. They wouldn't have just trapped. They wouldn't have made only one egress out the bottom of this pit, just in case something like this happened. He has actually too much respect for the Joe team to think they let themselves get trapped. And sure enough, he finds a tunnel borer, like a tunnel drilling machine, which I don't think we've seen before. It looks like, we've seen stuff like this on the cartoon, but I don't think we've seen it actually in the comic book before. It doesn't strike any memories. If you guys remember, if we've seen this tunnel borer before, let me know. But it's kind of the answer to how to get them out of the bottom of the pit.
Yo, Joe!
And up in Fort Wadsworth, we're right above those two. We are getting a very cool moment here. So we've been introducing a lot of new Joes over the last year's worth of issues, and there's been a lot of new characters come and go, and there's not a lot of emphasis on the go. It's a lot on the come. It's a lot on the who's new, and the old guys just get shuffled off. Like Hawk says, "Oh, you guys are on desk duty," and then Larry would just not use them very often, or just they'd get drawn in the background of scenes. This is the first time that we are actually giving a proper, legitimate military send-off to one of the G.I. Joes. Robert W. Graves, our guy Grunt, actually is resigning from the military. He is signing his DD 214, and he's going to be a civilian. So he is getting discharged, I'm sure, with full honors and all that that comes with it. And Hawk and Duke meet him outside. They let us know that he's going to Georgia Tech to study engineering. This will not be the last we see of Grunt. In fact, he comes back both as a civilian to help the team and then also as a soldier to help the team. And quietly one of the greatest arcs in all of the comics, because you go from being literally named Grunt being the most generic toy in the line. I've always thought the guy that probably most people overlooked, and Larry quietly gives him this great growth arc. Recently he came back too, I think, and there was like something to do with one of the newer IDW stuff, I believe. There was something to do with like the woman he loved was working for some other government or something. I'm vague flashbacks to that, but Grunt's story is not over. But this is just another chapter, and it's a very realistic, very cool chapter. I love the artwork. The third panel, there's no need for any words. It is just this solemn look on Robert's face where he's staring at his discharge papers like, I'm doing this. I'm really doing this. I'm really, leaving this life that I'm assuming he loves behind. And then you get that great shot, which is like a John Wayne Searcher shot of him in the doorway with the sunlight. There's no need for background of what he's looking at because it's just brightness. It's just ahead of him is a bright, bright future. It doesn't matter what's like if there's a vamp parked outside or a fence or whatever. It's just a bright light. Those two panels are really, really, really tremendous, guys.
Yo, Joe!
And before Grunt can leave, of course, he's got to say goodbye to one of his old buddies. And we see Clutch. Clutch shows back up, and Clutch gives him a handshake and a farewell. They leave on excellent terms. He doesn't give him a lift off base. They put him on the bus, and Clutch gives him a soldier salute and sends him off. Says, "Have a good life, soldier." It's great. I love seeing Clutch. I don't know when the next time we're going to see him, and the way that Wiggum draws Clutch, because I don't remember him drawing Clutch a lot. He's given him like a full beard. Last time we saw Clutch, traditionally, he was always more like 5 o'clock shadowy, This is, I've got a full beard. Like I forgot to shave. Like all my shaving equipment got trapped when the pit collapsed. That's what's going on.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, we pick up the action plot back in Sierra Gordo. Those generals that had bought the Terrordrome from Cobra in the previous issue, I think they're very excited about how it performed. But they are heading back to the Terrordrome, and their vehicle is all shot full of bullets. And we see that Dr. Mindbender and the Baroness are interrogating Flint, but the brainwave scanner is not working. Baroness suggests that Mindbender doesn't know how to operate the equipment, etc. And Mindbender is absolutely stumped. He is standing 1 foot away from Flint's quote unquote Flint's face and is just staring at him, and he's unable to see what is happening. Meanwhile, those two dictators, like the Fidel Castro looking dudes, they say that what do they say? The counter-revolutionaries are counter-attacking. They're already within mortar range. They want to overthrow their benevolent dictatorship and replace it with an otherwise decadent democracy. It's during this time that the ever so alert Dr. Mindbender notices, this guy's face isn't there's no perspiration. It's not perspiring. He's not sweating. He's probably barely blinking.
Yo, Joe!
What could possibly be wrong? And yet it's a couple pages till he gets the idea to check it out a little closer. But back at the pit, Cobra Commander and Destro are getting in that tunnel borer, and this is very cool. It's funny. It's probably like not needed in the sense of like overall urgency because they were going to run out of food and die anyway, right? But they very smartly, because that water had started pouring in last issue. Now the water's up to their waist, so now you see that this is the ticking clock for you, the viewer. So it's not only are they going to die, they're also going to drown. They found it just in time without really hammering it home. So Destro figures it out. How to turn it on, and they start going up, and they escape. They go, I don't know how far, like east or west or whatever, but they definitely don't go straight up into the pit. They go east or west a little bit, and then they end up going up, and they pop out in the middle of it looks like a mall, right? It's this closed for mall renovations. Thank God it's closed. And in this bottom picture, some fun little inside jokes. It looks like you got a Micronaut. You've got a flaming carrot drawn in there. Looks like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but I'm gonna assume that that's like maybe the Pillsbury Doughboy or something like that. So some fun little cartoon characters that Wiggum thought to draw in there in this toy store.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, on Cobra Island, Serpentor and Zartan are very smug in their victories, right? Serpentor's very happy with all the expansion and the money that's coming in by selling these terradromes, and the Dreadnoks are just chilling with donuts and grape soda. I love that. You guys know that I love that. And we see that Serpentor has been working in the scale model business, and he's decided to build a consulate in New York City, and it's going to be the Cobra consulate because they are a recognized nation. So they are going to, under the guise of diplomatic immunity, they're going to have their own Cobra building. It's awesome. They would go on to build it, and it would be there for quite a while. I think it eventually got torn down or blowed up real good. But this is the first time we see it. So Cobra's really going as quote unquote legit as they possibly can.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, again, man, Larry balances the storytelling just great. Like, it's just page. He knows when to bounce, when to go to somebody else, how much information to keep on one page, how to keep you coming back for more. It's very smart. So Cobra Commander and Destro, they are in a fashion store. It's funny. The mall is closed for renovations, but all the stores are still fully stocked. It's weird. So they go into a Eddie's fashion store, and they put on new clothing, but also, strangely, Eddie's fashion also has like straight disguises and wigs. It has fake beards. It has fake mustache. Like, I guess I'll give you the wig maybe a little bit, but the fake beard and mustache seems like it's just called like Eddie's alibis. This is also the first time that I ever learned the word mufti in civilian clothes. MUFTI. I know I've used that over the years, and it's absolutely from this comic book. It's great. And this is the page where you're blue balled because you go, oh, on the cover, they're going to show us their face. And we finally see Destro's face, but it is 100% covered by a fake wig and a fake beard, sunglasses, and a hat. And same thing with Cobra Commander. For the record, Cobra Commander's fashion sense is terrible. He looks absolutely nightmarish in that outfit. The purple striped pants with red boots, blue trench coat, beret, biker mustache, and John Lennon round sunglasses. He is a nightmare to look at. I adore everything about it. I absolutely adore everything about it. Destro looks a little more normal. I guess that would be kind of like the Z Cavaricci look of the day. It was 87 and all that stuff, but man, Cobra Commander looks frightening. Absolutely frightening. Also, I think this, with Destro choosing the white wig, I think this always made me think he was older than he maybe possibly was. I know he wasn't a young man, but this made me think like, oh, he's old like Sean Connery old. Scottish, get it. But we see a little makeup kit and everything, so we know that they're wearing wigs and mustaches, so we never see their faces.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, over in Sierra Gordo, Tomex Zaymot realized that the counter-revolutionaries are kind of making a surge, and it seems weird because they weren't this good before. All of a sudden, they got really great, and they see why. The G.I. Joe team is there to help. Leatherneck, Beachhead, Lowlight, Stalker, and it looks like... Oh, that's not... that's not one of the Joes. That's one of the counter-revolutionaries. And Stalker's giving them orders. So the Joes are there to help, and now Cobra knows.
Yo, Joe!
And finally, somebody realized that Flint is wearing a plastic face. Like a rubber face. He rips it off, and it is a mask. And of course, it's Snake Eyes. We see that he's still got a nice head of blonde hair, but that's the only thing that's nice about it because it almost makes both of them vomit looking at him. But Baroness recovers quickly and realizes that it's a bigger catch than she ever thought. They could get a lot out of Snake Eyes about the G.I. Joes. Mindbender covering Snake Eyes' face with a cloth so he doesn't have to look at it is everything. It's absolutely everything. He doesn't want anybody getting sick. It is humiliating and tremendous and fascinating. Middle panel, best thing on this page. Not only is Mindbender shocked, but he loses his monocle. That's how shocked Mindbender is. His monocle pops off like any good cartoon.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, somewhere west of New York, Destro and Cobra Commander have stolen a yellow Corvette, and Destro says, I don't know, hot wiring cars was one of your many talents, but this is where we get confirmation that Cobra Commander used to be a used car dealer. And so he was able to type up the registry and fill out the license plates, so everything looks totally legitimate on this. So this is like Cobra Commander getting back to the basics, like using all the skills that got him to where he was in the first place. He's been stripped of his organization. Now, can he survive as a kind of a petty criminal in this world? And we're going to see exactly if he can or cannot. Destro is way too comfortable, though, in that third panel. Arms back, like chilling in the wind. Like, first of all, you're wearing a hat and fake masks. If that wind blows everything off, you might lose your disguise. And secondly, you're not that in the clear, really. And State Trooper pulls up behind him with some a bubblegum machine. But we see that Cobra Commander has all the papers, and they're in perfect order.
Yo, Joe!
And the Joes are making their move in Sierra Gordo. There's some nice ink work on this. Really, really good use of shadow by Wiggum and Mashinsky here. I like it a lot, especially because you're dealing with low light. So you want to make sure that they're operating in the darkness, right? You make the images as dark as possible, but we still have to see what's going on. So they do an excellent job here. This third panel where you get these layers. So the foreground is, you could see that it's a green plant. Then the next layer is Stalker. Then the next layer is low light. And then the next layer is just the black outline of a plant. And low light has, the plant is 100% black. Low light is mostly black, but you see some outlines. Stalker, you see a little more light on him. So you see more green and more of his face. And then the plant that's at the nearest to the camera is completely green. So it's really nice work and nice use of layers on the colors and the inks here to drive home, how in the dark and how cool of a shot this is. But it's also low light shooting a tranquilizer dart, which we see him loading up in the previous panel. So even though he shoots the guy in the neck with it, just going to throw out there, even at even a tranquilizer dart at the kind of velocity that it would take, one, being shot out of his rifle, two, at that distance, to cover that distance, I feel like a sharp needle would rip right through your neck and kill you. I don't think that guy's alive.
Yo, Joe!
So back Cobra Commander and Destro, they've been pulled over by this cop, and this cop is Mr. Looky Loo, right? And this is one of those like coincidence things that, as comic book fans, I think you have to embrace. If you don't embrace this kind of storytelling, then I don't know why you're reading comic books, because of course it happens to be a town, or like the town next door to the town where Billy got killed, in the accident, right, where the car crash happened. Of course, like it wouldn't be any other way, because if there weren't coincidences in stories like this, then half the stories wouldn't really happen. So I'm always almost very forgiving of that, unless it's a little too wild. This is a little on edge, because it's just a random cop pulls him over, and he randomly remembers the face of the kid, and the kid had a picture of Cobra Commander kid being Billy, had a picture of Cobra Commander in his wallet. But not only does the cop remember what this kid's father in the wallet looks like, but he also pieces it together underneath a beret, dark sunglasses, wig, and a fake mustache. And he goes, "You look just like this comatose kid's dad." It's all a little, I'm on board. I'm game. I'm here for it, guys. I love it, but it's a big stretch to get there. But the important thing in this, the real important part of this, however that happens, is that Cobra Commander actually cares.
Yo, Joe!
And in Sierra Gordo, the Cobra's really getting pushed back. The GHO's really done a great job of training up these counter-revolutionaries. So Baroness and Dr. Mindbender are like, we got to go. So they're going to get on their helicopter, and on the way, she runs into a random Cobra guard who happens to be, I believe that's Leatherneck. So it's a random Cobra guard who just happens to be Leatherneck, who took the guy's suit of the Cobra guard that, Lowlight murdered by shooting in the neck on the previous page. And she says, you must be pretty good. You're in charge of guarding the prisoner. So she gives him the keys to Snake Eyes.
Yo, Joe!
So as the rest of the team, now all dressed as Cobra, as they break in, they run into another Cobra officer who says, "Viper, Wilson, I thought I saw you. You're not Wilson." And a great retort as Leatherneck slugs him. Very astute. "What do you do, memorize eyebrows?" I think that's fantastic. That's great. So this whole issue is all about people recognizing people underneath their disguises. Cobra Commander can't keep a disguise, and neither can Leatherneck, because everyone recognizes eyebrows. That's the moral of the story here.
Yo, Joe!
Has anyone ever done a Flint body with a white towel over the head in a brainwave scanner, like model or statue or something? I think that would be dynamic. I think if someone did like a Snake Eyes brainwave scanner statue and then did an alt version with Flint's body, that'd be awesome. We should totally make that happen. Please, all you customizers out there, make it so, number one. So the guys are helping Snake Eyes down. Stalker, of course, being Snake Eyes' buddy, he carries an extra mask for him, and also his hardware, like his gear and stuff. And so he hooks him up, and we get a little bit of a primer for readers. If you guys forgot, or new readers, you always got to remind them that Snake Eyes and Stalker fought together in Vietnam. Stalker made a decision back then to leave Snake Eyes because he got hit, and he'll never forgive himself. So that's why he's on this mission in the first place, because he's never going to leave Snake Eyes alone again. But Snake Eyes, of course, has long ago forgiven him, and you see that as he shakes his hand and gives him some love. But we talk about nobody else obeyed that order to leave that Stalker gave. The Storm Shadow ran through the firefight, grabbed Snake Eyes, put him on the chopper, saved his life, etc. So this is all a little foreshadowing for some stuff that's going to come up in the next couple issues. Very important stuff, and to show the bond between these two. They're like brothers.
Yo, Joe!
So with Baroness and Mindbender and Zaymot and Tomax, they're on that helicopter, and we see that the Joes are going to get shot at by them as they're fleeing the Terradrome. And why it's so key that we showed Snake Eyes' love for Stalker in that previous page, because Stalker now gets cut down. This is that moment in drama where they haven't focused on a character for a long time, like on a TV show. Then all of a sudden you get like a whole episode dedicated to like this B character and their personal growth. And it's because at the end of the episode, they get killed. And while he doesn't get killed, Stalker sure does get shot in this. Now, Leatherneck blows up the helicopter so that Cobra Command can't get away, but these guys run off into the woods carrying Stalker, and he's bleeding out.
Yo, Joe!
Some really, really nice emotional stuff in these two pages here. Stalker wounded pretty bad. Leatherneck says, "I haven't seen much worse on people who are still walking around." That's great bedside manner, Leatherneck. I love it. Really, really, really sensitive, I guess. But again, Stalker says, "Leave me behind," because I'm not going to make it. So I don't want you guys to get caught because of me. But we see that Snake Eyes, he doesn't leave anybody behind. He grabs Leatherneck's gun and puts on Lowlight's Starlight scope, and Snake Eyes is going to like one-man show save the day. This is like one of those Legend of Snake Eyes things. This is, how did Snake Eyes become who he is? This is the stories they tell about Snake Eyes.
Yo, Joe!
So he tells him, hey, take Stalker down to the trail. He's going to stay and fight him off. Stalker's arguing, don't let him do it, etc. Leatherneck reminds him, once the squad leader is disabled and capable, the next senior man takes over, and that, of course, is Snake Eyes. So it's the Cobra troops they need to worry about. They're going to have to deal with a well-armed ninja in the jungle at night. Does that sound fair to you? And Stalker's, he's bleeding out. He's in bad shape. But Snake Eyes is like, I got a job to do.
Yo, Joe!
And do it he does. So we're going to have to deal with a Snake Eyes kill count on this. I don't know what the number is, guys, because remember, we do keep a Snake Eyes kill count on the show. When last we checked, we were up at 25. He hasn't actually killed anyone in a few issues, so we haven't updated in a while. But I'm going to say, based on the second panel, that I'm going to add 2 to his kill count, because those 2 dudes that are flying in the air, I'm going to say he killed those dudes. However, he gets a bunch of mortars dropped on him. So we're going to update the kill count to 27. Everybody, update your Snake Eyes kill count to 27, marked and membered. And we don't know exactly what happened to Snake Eyes.
Yo, Joe!
And now we get a final couple pages we're going to revisit with Destro and Cobra Commander, and this doctor is filling them in on the status of Billy. He's not brain dead, been in a coma, been through severe trauma. He lost his eye, he lost his leg, he had fractured his head and stuff. They had to amputate his knee, but they were able to save the joint, so he should be able to get a prosthetic. So basically, Cobra Commander is faced with a son that he completely failed and is now, crippled for life. So it actually does warm Cobra Commander's heart. He says, even though I've been a lousy father all this time.
Yo, Joe!
And in a rare moment of empathy from Destro, he says, you've imprisoned him, outlawed him, and even subjected him to the Dr. Venom's brainwave scanner. You drove him into a nightmare existence. To support, he's saying this to get Cobra Commander to realize he's done all these terrible things, but he still has a chance to to fix it, to be there for his son now. And Cobra Commander says, true villainy lies not in the commission of evil, but in the denial of it. I should have loved him better. How can he ever forgive me? Destro says, you can't change the past. Let it go. Do something about the future. And with that, Destro leaves Cobra Commander by his bedside. Man, what a great issue. Guys, thank you for listening. Remember to come keep your eyes peeled on the space, or go to my Patreon. Go to patreon.com/JoeandJoePod to get every episode of Joe and Joe Illustrated, where we're going to cover all these issues. And be on the lookout for a couple fun interviews coming up, guys. Remember to check out Dreamer Comics Podcast. And now you're Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.